Hello, everyone. Welcome to session 3. This is execution and precision. More than any other caption, this committee is reflective of it. They're very detailed, they're very thorough, and they're so detailed and thorough that they created an additional document for you, the indicator and feedback phrases document. Now, they're going to talk about it in detail, but I'm going to share a few things. First, print it. You're going to want it. And as a matter of fact, the entire presentation is built off of it. Secondly, on the left, there are the different indicators on that, very detailed. I've never seen anything like it in the industry. And on the right are the feedback phrases for you as a judge to give to the directors, or if you're a director watching this, to really work in and hone on things to clean. So what I'd like you to do is, everyone, to close your eyes, and I want you to think about polishing and cleaning a routine. Which area of the body do you typically start with whenever you're polishing? Do you look at the upper body? Do you look at the lower body? All right, open your eyes. Everyone has preferences. Everyone has things that they look for. The beauty of what this team has created is it takes you to places that you maybe not hang on to, that you don't do as well. So find those things and continue striving to work through that growth mindset, find things to work on. So when Mitzi's talking about body angles, make sure that you read through those verbal phrases, circle some of the ones that maybe you don't say all the time, or as a director that you don't do. Secondly, buffering. Yes, there may be buffering issues because we're doing this in one continuous recording. If so, the committee members will take you through each moment. So truly strive to hang in there, go to the resources that we have for you, click on those links, and you can watch the routines later once you take notes. And then finally, this committee has created this presentation over hundreds of hours. But you know what? We're doing this in one take, so it's not going to be perfect. So truly enjoy watching them, learning from them, ask them questions later, but forgive us if we make mistakes. All right. Now I'm going to turn it over to Gina Laura Portillo. She is our committee lead. So Gina, take it away.
Thank you, Mary. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for the TDEA Execution and Precision Training. My name is Gina Lara Portillo, and I'm honored to serve as the Execution and Precision Committee lead. Mary, next slide, please. I'd like to start by introducing the committee members who will be presenting tonight and who have worked tirelessly on this endeavor. Mitzi Phillips, Alice Dack, John Fisher, Ashley Redding, and Shannon Faust. And we are led by our co-chairs, Ms. Mary Went and Ms. Betsy Heathcock. So let's sit in our director's chair for a second and think about our polishing nemesis. Mary mentioned it at the very beginning. What is it that we prefer? What is it that we tend to focus on? But what is it that gives us our biggest headache? What is it that gives us our biggest headache when it comes to polishing? Is it the position of the palm of the baton? Are they positioned in candlesticks or daggers? Focal points. Are our dancers looking left or at a diagonal? Take a moment to think about one or more of your polishing nemesis in regards to the execution and precision caption. What gives us the biggest headache? That is our task today. Not to give you headaches, but to train you on evaluating the precision and execution that give every performance that ending that we're just like perfection. Next slide, please. To introduce our indicators is John Fisher of Dallas ISD. John?
Good evening, and thank you, Gina. I'm going to discuss real briefly the visual category, which is 30 points on the score sheet, and it's broken down into two categories. The first category is evaluation of performers, and there are 7 indicators that we will explain to you in more detail this evening with my colleagues. The first indicator is body angles and focus. The second indicator is arm and leg shaping, which includes the pathways of arms and legs and the initiation of movement. The third indicator is completion of movement. In the next category, we will be looking at the evaluation of the performance as a whole. So we're talking about things in the indicator of consistent timing with music and other dancers. Also the indicator consistency of form and orientation, also known as spatial awareness, with stationary or in transition. And then we'll also look at the indicators of consistency of style from dancer to dancer. And then the seventh indicator, uniformity and use of manipulatives, if applicable to your routine. And now I'd like to introduce to you Shannon Faust, our past TDA president, to talk about some of the materials that you'll be using in this evaluation.
Thank you, John. Okay, so as we are listening to everyone speak tonight, it would be great if you guys could have a few materials out in front of you. One would be the judge's scoring rubric. That way you know how much each category is worth. We have choreography 30, technique 30, execution and precision 30, and then performance achievement 10. Next slide. And then also having our scoring chart available. That way we'll know where we're going to put each of these routines that we're going to be watching under distinguished, accomplished, proficient, developing, or improvement needed. So we'll be talking about these as we go, but having those charts out will help us get started. Next slide. So as we're listening to all of the presentations, I want you to really focus on all of the details of each of the indicators that we're going to go over. If you can listen to the phrases and examples that are given, it will really help to clarify these concepts. Next slide. So to start us out tonight, we have Mitzi Phillips, retired dance educator. Mitzi?
Welcome. I know that you have been taking in a lot of information, and I just want to start by allaying some of those fears if you start to feel overwhelmed. First of all, no one judge can see everything. This is why we have 3 judges on the panel, and among the 3 of us, we are going to get a solid critique to those teams. Second of all, I want you to think in terms that when you become a judge, you don't lose all of that wonderful information that you gain from becoming a director. You get to take that with you. And just to kind of see that that is true, I want you to think back to the time that you polished your team and that they were struggling with focus or body angles. I want you to pause the video and I want you to jot down some things. How did you know? How did that manifest itself? Pause the video and make some notes, and we'll come back to that in a second. So let's take a look at the instrument that we're using. You'll see that it's separated into 2 sides. On the left, you have all of the indicators, and we're going to talk about those today. And we're going to go into depth on the ones that are a little less obvious. On the right, I really want you to take a look at that. That is information that as a new judge or as a director, it would have saved me a lot of heartache, a lot of things that I had to learn by trial and error, and a lot of time. So that is a gift that I would have loved to have. So going back to the left-hand side, I asked you at the beginning to jot down those ideas. And I think what you're going to see is that as you look at this, and I want you to look at all of it, but I'm only going to talk about the things that are not so obvious, but you're going to see some things that came up on your jot list. Okay, so some of the things that are, I think, not so obvious, okay, for a new judge. Number 1 is the second bullet point where it talks about body angles like your obliques, okay, or facing a diagonal. So what we want to talk about, okay, to a team that's maybe struggling with this idea is to make sure that their dancers understand the difference between their personal diagonal and the corner of the room, and that they should be using their personal diagonal because that is going to be consistent to the dancer next to them. The other thing to stress about those body angles is that it is essential that those are clean, because it doesn't matter how much you polish an arm when you're facing to the front. If you turn to the angle and the angle is wrong, the arm is going to be off and the polish is going to go out the window. So those, in that way, those body angles are important. Moving down to focus. The first two are, I think, obvious. Okay, the last three are a little less obvious, but okay, the really nice thing about them is they're easy to remember because they all involve the same thing, and that is a change in direction. For example, sorry, focus on the axial movement. Okay, if they're not spotting the same, sorry. If the team is not spotting the same, then every time they plant that working leg, their body angles are going to be wrong, and they're going to be off also on their landings. Their body angles are going to be off on their landings. The same thing when a team is doing a leap or a leap or a jump that changes direction. They need to make sure that they use their focus, okay, and they need to spot, okay, the ending of that landing so that when they come out of it, their body angles are correct. And then finally, okay, their focus on transitions that travel, and that could be as simple as a pivot turn. Okay, their focus needs to get there, okay, before their body does. And there needs to be that foot and eye coordination. And that focus tells them where to place the foot. So let's put that into play. Next slide, Mary. On this video, before we start, what I want you to take a look at is two places. Number one, okay, is at about the 17-second mark. What you'll see is that the group will pivot turn from the front to the back and then the back to the front. I want you to pay attention to what happens with the polish and to make some notes on why it happens. That's the most important thing, is like why is it going wrong, so that we can give them some information to help. The second place is at the 36-second marker. And at that point, they chenille to the front, they go into a leap, and then they roll to the ground. Same thing, I want you to pay attention to what goes wrong and why does it go wrong. So if this starts to buffer, then you want to use the link that we've provided.
All right, so I'm going to hit play. Mitzi, you take a drink while we're doing this. You're powering through beautifully. So here we go. Turn. I just saw that pivot turn.
Next second here. Next slide. So if I were scoring this, okay, the things that I would point out to the team is that at the 17-second part, where the girls pivot from the front to the back, that's where the problem starts to go wrong. But it doesn't really manifest itself until they do the second pivot turn. And the arms go over the head and then they start to open up. Okay, by that time, the body angles are wrong. They're off, okay, because they haven't spotted the turns, and it shows up in the arm polish. At the 36-second mark, it starts to go wrong because they're not clearly spotting on the chenille turn. But then, okay, it gets even worse, okay, when they roll to the ground and they're not spotting, and the spacing really gets off. And it's off for a while until they can stand back up and correct it. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So how do we turn, okay, that information into our feedback? How do we give them our feedback? I want you to read that opening sentence, put it on pause, and read the opening sentence. And then I'll come back. Okay, so Okay, if we take a look and we break this down, okay, in that opening sentence, it says, I appreciate your push to incorporate some difficulty into this routine. In previous videos, you've heard the instructors talk about affirmations, okay, making sure that we use language that suggests as opposed to demands, and then using language also from the T-test document that connects our feedback to the rubric. So in that opening line, that is an affirmation. And it helps teams to let them know that we appreciate, we find value in what they're doing. And it makes them open and more receptive to hear the criticism. When it says you may want to consider, okay, that is one of those suggestive phrases, okay, as opposed to a demanding phrase. And then the word inconsistency is the word that ties us back to the rubric. And if we can switch and take a look at the rubric, and you will see, okay, it's in a red highlight in the middle of proficient. Okay, so that is where, okay, that is where, if we were looking at this little clip, okay, of a routine, okay, right now, okay, it is sitting in the proficient range, and that's where we're marking it. At this point, okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Gina, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about excellent execution and precision as far as arm and leg polish is concerned.
Thank you, Mitzi. Thank you. That was you powered through very well. When adjudicating this indicator, there are several factors involved. Looking at the shape of arms and legs. Are the arms consistent when we look across the ensemble throughout the performance? Are they straight or are they curved? Are the shapes the same across the ensemble? Leg shapes can affect the visual if attitude positions, levels of arabesque or plies are different. Arm and leg placement. Are arms parallel overhead or are arms touching ears? Are T's sagging or arms are not hyperextended? Are the legs in the same place throughout the performance? Are dancers kicking towards their nose or over towards their shoulder? Are feet together or are dancers supposed to be standing in second? The paths of arms and legs. Is arm and leg work clean? Not just the beginning and the end of the movement, but in the pathway that it travels. Initiation of movement. Is everyone starting the movement from the same place? Besides just causing a lack of unity because it looks different, does the initiation problem also cause a timing problem? Are the arms breaking into a high V from the chest or are they sweeping up into a high V from the side? Next slide, please. Please keep the scoring rubric in mind. Are all performers fully completing all arm and leg movements, utilizing the energy that extends beyond the fingers and toes, and adjusting their core to compensate for faster tempos or rapidly changing movement? Are they consistently completing rotations, ending positions and skills, isolations, and movement before weight or direction changes? You've already practiced the many ways to let a group know where they are excelling and where improvement is needed. Mitzi gave several examples specifically on affirmations. I encourage you to continue using this as we progress throughout the training. Completion of movement. Thank you, Mary. Our next indicator is completion of movement. Arms and legs. Do the arms and legs get completely straight before the dancer goes on to the next movement? In reference to tempo, are they completing movement at an easy to manage tempo and demonstrating a clear understanding of what it means to fully extend arm and leg movements? This is more difficult when the tempo is very fast. Dancers must adjust and tighten their core to compensate for the speed. If there is a rapid succession of movements, this is where problems with completion are most easily manifest. Energy beyond the fingertips and toes. Does the energy in the arms and legs extend beyond the fingertips and toes? Do the arms sag when they should be supported from the shoulder to fingertip? When assessing these skills, do they complete the rotations in a turn or a turn series? Are all dancers finishing the turn sequence in the same stance before transitioning to the next step? Mitzi gave us a few examples in the video she showed previously. So I encourage you to go back, look at it, and look at specifically the skills to assess as far as turns and leaps. Are dancers finishing the leaps in the same position before transitioning to the next step? When the performers execute isolations, are they completing the full range of the isolated body part before moving to the next step? When there is a shift in direction, do the performers finish the last movement before the weight shifts to move in the other direction, even when the shift has to be quick? Next slide, please. As we look at other performances throughout the training, please keep the scoring rubric in mind, as it affects the overall execution and precision score, specifically looking at the T-test language. Are all performers fully completing all arm and leg movements, utilizing energy that extends beyond the fingertips and toes, and adjusting their core to compensate for faster tempos or rapidly changing movements? Looking at the verbiage, specifically, consistently was the word that Mitzi used in the last performance. Are they completing their rotations, ending positions and skills and isolations and movement before weight and direction changes? In the technique training, you learned many ways to let a group know where they are excelling and where improvement is needed. Same was what Mitzi has said as well. I encourage you to continue using this exceptional tool in all scoring captions. Next slide, please. To review consistent timing with music and other dancers is Ashley Redding, director at Northside ISD in San Antonio.
And I will be taking over for Ashley tonight. So the discussion on this particular indicator is about the consistent timing with music and other dancers. So I want you to take a moment and just read through this slide. I'm going to be very quiet. I'm not going to pause it, but I just want you to read through, and then I'm going to tell you where I tend to fall in using this indicator. For me, wow, I always touch on the landing of the turn or the landing of the leap or the closure of the battement, especially as the routine continues on. That's where I can really see that the timing with the music and the other dancers is off. So I encourage you, and what I would do as well, is to look at the other indicators and in this particular, in number 4, and try to find them and make sure that I'm really honing in on the ones that I don't always use. And I'm going to practice those whenever I do an audio critique. Try to not talk about the things that I always talk about and find something new. And in the scoring chart, just like everyone else has said, you'll find a lot of the same verbiage. One of the things I'm going to really hone in on here is if it's for the full duration or some of the performance. That's very helpful as you continue to discuss with them. Say maybe we started off strong, but it was really for the majority of the performance we did not land, or for some of the performance we did not land. However you want to say it in a beautiful way is important. And next up, I'm going to toss it to my very good friend to talk about Alice Stack. She's going to talk about indicator number 5.
Thank you so much, Mary. I am Alice Stack. I'm the director at Marcus High School in Flower Mound, Texas, and it's an honor to be here with all of you tonight. This indicator is specifically about spatial awareness while stationary and while transitioning. So simply put, formations, right? I think this is kind of the building block of execution and precision. It doesn't matter how clean our dancers are if they're not standing in straight lines, or we can't tell what the formation is supposed to be, and that can take away from the overall picture. So most of these are really, really obvious, right? I think most directors would be able to look through this list on the left of indicators and know that their dancers are supposed to be in lines, either front to back, side to side, making pretty diagonals. They know they're supposed to be in files. If there are 3, say, triangles, they know they're supposed to be the same amount of distance between the right triangle and the center one versus the left triangle and the center one. And then obviously we know we're supposed to maintain that formation if we're dancing or we're transitioning. I think the trickier part is what to do when it's not working and how to fix it. That's where you get your possible feedback on the right. And I think that's what's going to be important when you're judging and when you're giving feedback to these teams. So one of the most obvious on the right is the very first one. You want to set and practice formations in a space that's consistent with where you're performing. But let's be real. A lot of times we are not dancing in the space that we're being evaluated or performing in, because how many people have access to a gym or to a field every day? So we can give them really great tips on how to make that happen. For example, we only get the field about once and a half times a week, 1.5 times a week. So when we're in the gym, we'll lay out a rope and it's marked with yard lines, major yard lines, and then tape for hash marks. This helps the girls get oriented with their spacing before we go out onto the field, so they understand how far they have to travel, what it feels like to be 5 yards apart or 2 yards apart, something like that. So that might be a helpful tip for somebody. Another helpful tip, if you see a director struggling with maintaining the integrity of a formation, is to look at their foot closures. Just like Mary talked about when you're landing a leap, coming out of a turn, you want to look and see if they are maybe closing to their turning leg, closing to their base leg. All of a sudden, we're no longer in our files, right? So we want to look at that and see if we can help them figure that out. And then finally, if they are not transitioning as a group, we can maybe come up with some ways to help them practice that. And that's what we've developed next. So Mary, if we can go on to the next slide, in keeping with the spirit of this feedback in these specific sentence stems that you've been working on with the other indicators, I kind of created a few examples. So you might want to say something like, I'm going to get this little view of everybody out of the way so I can read. I've noticed that your formations are very consistent in spacing from side to side. There's that positive thing that Mitzi was talking about. But in that block formation, I've noticed your diagonals were getting off, starting with lines 3 and 4. One way you can help this is helping your dancers becoming aware of their depth. So maybe have them rehearse getting to this formation, start 8 counts before, go into the formation change, and then dance 8 counts into the new section so that they get used to determining whether or not that depth is correct. You can get them there and say, oh, nope, line 3, you're too close to line 2 again. Let's try that again. Another example that you might want to do for a little bit of a more sophisticated routine is something along the lines of, I really enjoy that your dancers are traveling quite a bit from side to side. That really makes it exciting to watch your choreography. But I noticed after the leap, before they're returning back to home base to their original yard lines or their original spots on the floor, the spacing was not consistent across the formation. So maybe consider rehearsing the distance each dancer is traveling on every step of that locomotor section. So for example, I'm going to take a chasse on 1 and 2. I'm going to stop them. Are we all behind our people? Oop, nope, let's go back. How many yards did we travel on that? Most of us went 1. Okay, let's try 1. Ready? 1 and 2. Stop. Okay, there we are. We're all on that next yard line. Perfect. And then as you go through that section, it'll become much easier for them to keep that form consistent. And then finally, maybe you have a little bit more of a beginner team and you're noticing that they're not quite understanding how to stay in files. How do we help that director? So a comment may be, when your dancer is in longer files, make sure they understand how to align nose to spine. So when you see a file that starts maybe, directly on that 47.5, we've got 2 perfect runways, right? We've got the train tracks, we've got the 45-yard line and the 50. But as we go down the 47.5, all of a sudden, by the end, they're veering to the 50. So help those dancers understand they can't just line up close. They can't just be shoulder to shoulder. They literally have to put their nose behind the dancer in front of their spine. Next slide, please, Mary. And so finally, when you're looking at this chart, those are the type of tools that we need to use to help our directors progress from a category such as developing to proficient. What are the feedback mechanisms they need to go back and make that jump the next time they get evaluated? Or maybe they're an accomplished team. They're really, really close. And the majority of the duration of the performance, most of the performers are doing these things, keeping that spatial awareness. How do we get them to distinguished? And now I'm going to kick it back to Mary, my sweet friend, who's taken over for Ashley tonight.
Thank you so much, Alice. And that was amazing. Truly, truly amazing. So on the second to last indicator, Shannon will end us with all of our indicator discussion. But this one is on consistency of style. And there's two parts to it. The consistency of style from dancer to dancer, or the genre itself, and then also the consistency of the team style. So I'm going to start with the second one. And I know that you can read in the right, but one of the examples that I love to give is in the consistent team style is when they have that beautiful slow high kick that is very controlled. They are lifting those battements, taking them down. You see every single dancer really exhibiting that particular team style. That's so important. And when you see it as a judge, it's beautiful. The top one, the top indicator, consistent style of genre. I always think of a hip hop with this. That's where I go to. And I actually comment a lot on this, is that front line, that downstage group, they're really into the plie. They really have the isos. They're very staccato. They're rigid. They're hard hitting. While I look more upstage to those back lines, and they're really not into the plie. They're not grounded into the floor. They don't understand where the isolation is hitting and really reflecting the style of that genre. So look at these comments on this feedback, and again, really practice saying that, and find some other examples in YouTube and in and on YouTube. And if you need any other examples, reach out to me and I'll share some with you. Going to the scoring chart, all of you have seen that. Again, look at the verbiage. And I'm going to reinforce the bottom. How much of the routine did they do? So that's really important with style. You'll find that you're really speaking a lot more, in my humble opinion, to the duration of the routine with which they're reflecting that almost than anything else. And now I'm going to toss it for the final indicator to Shannon Faust. Shannon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mary. Okay, next slide. So I will be going over with you the indicator of uniformity in the use of manipulatives or props. So we're talking about two subcategories, small manipulatives and large, and we're really looking at three main things: uniformity, controlling the manipulative, and safety. So let's start first with small manipulatives, handheld. So we're talking things like palms, tambourines, hoops, hats. The first thing when we're talking about uniformity is consistent hand placement. Where are those hands being placed as we're holding the manipulative? If we're holding a hoop, are we holding it on the sides? How are we holding the hat? So consistent placement on the prop. We also want to designate the direction. So if we are holding a hoop and our arm is out in a T, which way is that hoop facing? Which way is the palm facing? So the direction of the actual manipulative itself. Then we go into the control of the manipulative. And one of the things that we want to remember is that the hand is an extension of the arm, and all the energy should come out of the arm through the fingertips. And if we have a manipulative, then out through that manipulative as well. So the wrist is going to play a really important part in making sure that it maintains its integrity, because if it's low or if it's too high, then the dancers aren't going to have that control of their manipulative. So just making sure that the wrists are nice and extended. We also want to be able, as judges, to talk about the possible use of thumbs in order to control a prop. So again, if they're holding on to that hoopla and they're holding in a fist, that hoop can still really move inside of the fist. So then we might want to add a thumb in there and say, you know, if you put your thumb on the hoop, you might be able to regain some control of that hoop. Again, just utilization of the thumb. All right. And then again, control, we always are talking to our dancers about the use of their core. So using manipulatives is no different, because now we have a weight on the end of our hands. So we want to make sure that the core is engaged so that they can do sharp movements, they can do faster tempos, things of that nature. And then lastly, in the control section, we're really looking to make sure the dancers are using their peripheral vision. So if the dancers are not dancing in that coronal plane that we talk about, and their arm is too far back, then that way their manipulative is going to be too far back and they're not going to be able to control it. So really making sure that the dancers are using that peripheral vision. And then lastly, safety. And when we're talking small manipulatives, we're mainly talking about making sure that the spacing between dancers is adequate. So if we're normally fingertip spacing and then we're going to use a hoop, of course, we need adequate spacing so that we're not hitting someone with our prop. Okay, next slide. Let's move to large manipulatives now. And so we're thinking about things like the video that you're going to see in a little bit with really large balls. We're talking about chairs, ladders, oil derricks, anything you can imagine. Okay, those are large manipulatives, but we're still looking at the same three things. We're looking to see if they have uniformity, if they are controlling the manipulative, and if they're being safe while doing so. Okay, so one of the things that we're talking about in uniformity of the larger props is where are they holding the prop to pick it up and to set it down? Are they holding the chair on both sides? Are they holding it on the top? How are they holding that? And then when they're moving, what is the direction of the prop? Sometimes we tell our dancers that we're going to travel to the diagonal, but where is the manipulative facing? Is it going in the direction that we're moving, or is it staying to the front? So really making sure that we're identifying that and that it's the same all the way across. We also want to think about where is the prop in relationship to the torso, and that's going to help us again make sure that things are at the same level. Also, is it too far out? Is it in? We know we can control it a little bit better if it's closer to the torso. So just things that we want to be thinking about as we're watching these routines. And then talking about control, again, those wrists are so important because now we're talking about being able to control something like a chair. So we want to make sure that we are putting it down the same way, picking it up the same way. And also that wrist that we talk about, not only is it going to be different in uniformity and all the different levels you can be holding the chair, but in order to hold it nice and tight to make sure that we're controlling that manipulative as well. Use of the core, again, very important because now we have something even heavier. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining the use of that core so that when we're picking up something heavy, that we're able to use that prop quickly, that we can stay with the tempo, things of that nature, okay? And then lastly, talking about the use of the thumbs again in the control, let's say we're using something like a suitcase. And so as the dancers are moving, the suitcase might be moving a little bit too much, and then we can bring up the thumbs again and we can tell them just to utilize their thumb on the top of that handle, and then it's not going to slide so much and swing so much in the hand. So hopefully those little pointers will help to give the dancers a little bit more control of their manipulative. And then safety, so important, especially with those bigger props. And now we're not just talking about spacing, but we're talking about how are we setting it down. If we have a chair, we want to make sure that all four legs of the chair are firmly down on the ground before we do the next thing, which is my next point, and that's stepping up onto the manipulative. We want to make sure that we're stepping in towards the center so that the dancers are not falling off. So just some little things to kind of think about. And if we'll go to the next screen, we're going to look at a little video together, and hopefully the buffer will work. And if it doesn't, that's okay. We can go back. I'm going to talk through it as we go. This one routine has both small and large manipulatives. So we're looking for all the indicators that I just went over while we are watching the routine. Okay, it's going to take them just a second before they pick them up. And the video will shift a little bit so you can see it better in just a second. Okay, when they grabbed them, are they grabbing those manipulatives in the same spot? Are they grabbing them in the same way? You can really see their hands highlighted on the different colors of balls. So are they extending their wrist? Are the wrists all nice and extended? As the balls are going up and down, one of the things we think about is the timing. Right here, when they're setting it down. Are they setting it down in the same way? They are not. They're not picking them up in the same way. Some have the sides and some have the top. And as I was saying before, we're getting ready to pick these balls up. Anytime they go over the head and we're having some issues with timing, it might not be timing. It might be the fact that that core is not being initiated in order to get that big ball up and then all the way down. You'll notice that several times, especially on the leaps. You know, you have something that's heavier on the end of your hand now that's going to take up a little more time. So the core is very important. As we're traveling, again, and then putting them down, are we putting them down in the same way? Are we grabbing the next set of manipulatives in the same way? When we're executing our turns, what is the shaping of the arm? And maybe if we hold that manipulative closer to our center, would we have more control where the balls are not bouncing up and down? Small manipulatives now. Are our wrists extended? Are we able to have that energy coming out through the fingertips, in and out of the manipulative? Are we holding them the same? Again, as we're turning, how are we holding? How are we shaping? Right here, they're going to get ready to exit. And when they exit, again, the leap up and down, those balls having a hard time coming up and then all the way back down. So all of the indicators that we discussed, and if we go to the next screen, all of the indicators that we discussed, if you're trying to think about just the uniformity and use of manipulatives, where does this routine fall? Distinguished, all performers all of the time. Accomplished, majority of the performers for the majority of the time. Proficient, some of the performers for only some of the time. Developing, few performers, just few times. Or improvement needed, which is most all of the dancers struggled most of the time. And I think on this, we could probably agree that it would be proficient. Some of the dancers were doing those indicators with the wrists and the torso and all the things we discussed some of the time. Next screen. And next we have John Fisher with Dallas ISD. He will be going over our next steps, and he's also the TDEA Lifetime Achievement winner. John?
Thank you, Shannon. As we close this seminar regarding the assessment of execution and precision, I know it's a huge amount of information to digest. My suggestion is to not become overwhelmed. All of this information are tools to assist you with becoming more knowledgeable as either a judge or more informed as a director. Focus on breaking down this information into small doses rather than the big picture. Challenge yourself to focus on one indicator at a time and realize the small victories along the way before moving on to the next indicator. Pacing is key, as well as managing your time with focus on execution and precision. And the exciting news is by participating in the TDA assessments, you will be a part of a historic event. Assessments of this nature have never happened before until now. So thank you for your attention, and we open this conversation up and back to Mary.
Thank you so much, John. So we're going to conclude with the discussion. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're only going to spend probably about 10 minutes at most. So hang with us. But I think you'll find that this is probably the section that you'll enjoy the most. So I'm going to toss out a question just to get us all started. And all of you have served either behind the judges table and been scoring this season, or as a director where your team was in front of that scoring table. So what has been your biggest challenge these past 2 seasons in fall or spring with this caption? Do you have any tips or tricks to share with everyone, or anything else you want to share about the assessment? So now I'm going to toss it to the group.
Talking about the assessment, it has really opened my eyes as a older director and adjudicator, in the sense that I think a lot of times, both as directors and judges, we really get used to trying to just take all the good stuff and move it aside and just really focus in on, I don't want to say the negative, but the things that need to be fixed.
Right.
And I think sometimes as directors and dancers, and we're listening to these critique tapes, I think that it can sometimes feel discouraging because we wonder if they notice the positive. So I feel like with this verbiage, we are able to really let the kids and the directors who spend so much time on this know what we noticed. And so using some of those very key words, we can say, I really appreciate that you guys were picking the prop up and setting it down exactly the same way. Now, when we get ready to do our turns, we need to think about, and so forth. So I just have found that it has really helped me to realize how much it's important that we utilize the positive and then also tell them what to work on. I think these tools are perfect for that.
Thank you, Shannon. Anyone else? Mitzi?
I think as a judge, again, I'm a writer, not a talker. And so us having to talk for 10 minutes was a huge challenge for me. But what it forced me to do, and I think this is great, is that it forced me to have to look at, okay, so why is the problem happening? And then when you get to the end, okay, that gives us more to talk about. Okay, that's a place that we can really address those problems and really make that a tool for teams to be able to take it back to the studio, take it back to the field, and work to improve the next time. And then so that's kind of where I went to just kind of stretch. That's
And
it.
that's what it's all about, isn't it? This growth mindset. That's why we're all here and we're giving our time. Yes, Alice.
I would say from a director's standpoint, I think that this has really given me some tools that helped get me over what Mary discussed in the very beginning. We all have our things that we naturally polish really well and that we're good at and we spot. We all have our things we tend to overlook or maybe don't enjoy polishing. And I found if I don't enjoy polishing it, it's usually because I'm not quite sure how to solve that problem. So I tend to avoid it, right? So I think one of the things that we took away as a team from some of the feedback we got was some of these beautiful tips and tricks you don't get when you go to competition. You just get the judge that says, these diagonals are off, or what's wrong with your polish on that? That doesn't look good. Well, I can go back to Mitzi's notes and I can say, well, maybe it's because we weren't all sure where our corner was of our box or of the room. And then you can hear your students start to absorb that as well and help each other understand it. So it's a really neat way as a director to grow. Even, I mean, I've been doing it for 25 years and I learned new tricks. So it's possible through this process.
I
think-
love you,
Yeah,
Alice.
I think that's the best part about having the 10 minutes is, as adjudicators, we're so used to having, the 2 minutes to try to put everything in there that we can only say so much. And the very cool thing about this is during the wrap up when we're judging is that we can and we do have time to give directors ideas on maybe how we would do it. I instead of just saying your all cones are not all together, you can say that during the time, and then the wrap up, you have plenty of time to say, what I used to do with my team is when we're doing a cone turns, we do step prep and hit, and we stop at the corner and head is to the front so that everybody can find where they're adding their plie and it's at the same time. So just giving those pointers here and there at the end with this tool, we have enough time to do that. And I think that that's really helpful for people if you've been, a director for 1 year or 50. So
That's great. Thank you. Yes, John Fisher.
Hold on, let me get. I just want to say to add on to what everyone else is talking about, to what everyone else is talking about. When people question why should we go to TDA assessment when we have all these other opportunities and other options, other companies we can go to, some that they've been loyal to for many, many years. I think this is what we're talking about. This conversation we're having right now is exactly why directors need to be clued in and educated as to buying into the TDA assessment for both the fall and the spring, because we're talking about two different assessments, one for field and one for contest, because they are getting that rich feedback in a longer amount of time for the judges to really evaluate and assess what they've seen and give the valuable feedback that they don't get if it's just jotted down on a score sheet, and the fact that this score sheet is universal, that it's not designated for specific genre. It's not for hip hop. It's not for jazz. It's not for pom. That it judges the entire routine in one fell swoop. I think that's the greatest thing about the TDA assessment.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mitzi.
And one thing I thought about, like when we created this, and on that right-hand side, what I felt myself coming back to, like the solution every time, was to to tell them to make sure the details are taught right the first time. And I think, I mean, as a young director, I needed to hear that even if you've got a choreographer in the room, that to sit in on that session, and that if there's something like a head focus or a body angle or an arm that's not clear, they need to correct it at that moment so that they don't have to go back and reteach and the kids have to relearn it. And I've even noticed this in watching like officer tryouts and officers teaching and just looking at it going, oh my goodness, you know, that it needs to be addressed.
That's great. Yes, Gina.
Just kind of to add on to like what Mitzi said, my officers have kind of started doing that within the past couple years. Instead of just going back and like reteaching the dance exactly how it was taught, we kind of look at it ahead of time. We've started looking at it ahead of time and kind of like, okay, where are I guess like our nemesis, right? Like we called it earlier. Like where are the places that we know it's gonna be a little bit tricky to clean? Let's look at it. How are we gonna teach that to where it's not an issue and we're spending 3 hours on it, and you know, during a practice, you know, where we're already doing it to where we don't have to come back to it. So that's one of the main things that's been very helpful also, and like looking at it in that way, like let's prevent this from happening. And then with what Alice said earlier, as far as like where they're practicing, as far as spacing, what what I did this year, what was, I mean, beneficial to me is that we had access to the field or a band pad or whatever, but how we were polishing the dance wasn't going from where we were practicing to where we were performing. So all of a sudden, it wasn't going over there. For whatever reason, they'd get on the football field and everything was out the window. So I learned, what I had to do was polish the routine on the field, looking at it from the bleacher, from that high point where like the band director is even standing, and just kind of like with like the megaphone, kind of like, okay, over here on the 45, let's fix this and let's make sure that we're landing this, you know, you just something as simple as like where they're landing from their turn. Are they stepping out? Are they stepping in? You know, just looking at it from that standpoint for football season. And that helped going into contests. So if just having all that stuff, like you all said, how do we fix it before it's a problem, kind of thing.
Yeah, really great. Thank you, Gina. So final thoughts, anyone? Yes, Betsy.
I just want to say that first of all, being a part of the process has been just incredible. And the resources that now I use anytime I'm doing any kind of adjudicating, I mean, I feel like I have learned so much. And like Mitzi said earlier, and even Shannon, I just wish I'd had resources like this when I was a director, because it was just us. I mean, we had to figure it out on our own, and we didn't even go from school to school like people do now. And I just hope that people understand that, you know, just going through the training and taking it all in and just trying to put it into play is going to make their programs even stronger. And plus your kids are going to be given that opportunity that they haven't been given before. I mean, I was lucky because my group did perform with our band and we did go to UIL events and things like that. So this, just opening this whole door for dance, I think is just so incredible. And I'm just proud to see it happening, and very honored just to be a part of all of it.
So we thank you for attending. And if anybody else has anything they want to say, just interrupt me, because this is organic and I said that we would. But in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving forward. If you have questions, every member of this team wants to help you. And so we thank you for your time. We thank you for wanting to be a part of the process. We encourage you to reach out to any of us, and we hope that you have enjoyed it. Next up, performance achievement. And you're almost done, so hang in there. Thanks, team. Y'all were amazing.